All right, all right. Welcome back to Influential Dental, where we are hearing the stories behind people's success in the dental space, bringing on some of the most influential people in the dental space. And it's so exciting. I'm thrilled to welcome Bill Neumann and Kim Larson today to our show. But before we jump in with that, I'm Julieanne O'Connor. I'm here with my co-host, Michael Keeter. I am what they call an influence coach, who is coaching some of the most influential people in the space who want to take back their quality of life and really leverage their influence. And so it's an absolute pleasure to be back and welcome our listeners to hear these incredible guests who you may be seeing all over the map, because they seem to be at pretty much every event that there is out there, or that's what it feels like some days. I'm going to turn it over to my co-host to say a few words, and then we will begin a little introduction with our guest.
Yes, hey, thanks, Julianne. And again, welcome, Bill and Kim. My name is Michael Keeter, again, co-host of Influential Dental. I've been in the dental space for over 20 years and very excited to have our guests on today who are very influential in the dental service organization space. And I've known Bill throughout these at various conferences, and we have some common companies that we've worked with and worked for. So again, Bill and Kim, thank you very much for being here, and look forward to really hearing about your journey, who's mentored you, who has been influencing your life, about your company, and just about, the industry in a whole. And our show is a little bit different when we talk to doctors and executives in different pace and dental space. It's not necessarily about clinical dentistry. It's truly about what makes people tick and why people do the things they do, and why, dentistry is a great space to be in, and how we can, be a positive influence in it. So again, thank you both for being here. And Julianne, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah, so I'm going to today, because we have two incredible guests, I'm going to let you guys do a little self-introduction, or you can introduce each other. What I love is you guys also have a podcast. So when you guys asked if there were any prepared questions, we're like, nope. But when I originally asked Bill, Kim, I don't know if you know or saw what he wrote, but he replied with like, there's no way I'm doing this without Kim, basically, because I wouldn't be here without her. And so can we start with you, Kim, and have you do an introduction?
Should I introduce Bill?
Whatever you guys want. We're really.
She'd like to because it'll be a lot shorter, right?
Be a lot
you're
shorter.
thinking?
So Bill's in sales. He's long-winded, and that's why you see him at every event. And I do more of the operations and the marketing. So I'm behind the scenes, sort of keeping everything afloat while Bill's running around meeting with people. But he started out in working for a company called Colty and Wheeldon, selling products like pins and posts. And it brings us we laugh a lot about that. So that's how he started out. And then we jointly started an app for dental sales professionals. And we sold that to a company, and then Bill started to work for that company, and he started publishing the first group dentistry publication. And then in about 2011, 2012, I went with him to the CDA in California, and a lot of people were talking about group dentistry and and dental groups. And as I went back and started to research it, people are saying this is how the industry is going to go. This is going to be where we head. It's already happened in medical. It's going to happen in dental. And so we started Group Dentistry Now because there was really no information out there. And anything that was out there was negative. Bill, I made your history very short. If Bill had told it, we would have been 45 minutes. We would just be...
I love it. So first of all, that's interesting, and it's fun to get a little history, because it's like we lose track. Time flies so fast, right? You lose track. 2011. Isn't it interesting that was when things were starting to shift, right? And now look at it. It's unbelievable. So Bill, tell us a little bit about you.
Maybe I'll tell you a little. Yeah, she's like, no, don't. So Kim's right. I started at Coltine, and I'll tell you a little bit about Kim. So I started in the dental industry, but I've been in the industry for a while. We didn't mention it, Kim, but Kim and I are married. So that's why she was at the CDA with me. And some people know that, some people don't. Kim has a marketing PR degree and a marketing background, and was a stay-at-home mom for a while. And so she got to hear a lot about dental when I was going to various shows. And Kim's right. Way back when we were at CDA, they weren't called DSOs then, which, when you think about, they were called group practices. And then there was this shift in, the name. And in fact, the ADSO, which is the Association for Dental Support Organizations, used to be called the Dental Group Practice Association, DGPA. And somewhere somebody came up with the idea to change group group practice to DSO, although we kept the name Group Dentistry Now because we wanted to appeal to not just these, we would say DSO seems to relate to larger groups, a lot of times private equity backed, but we wanted to appeal to everybody, the doctor owned, doctor led, private group practice, whatever your model was. We wanted to speak to all those different types of modality, but not necessarily solo. This shift we saw from solo practitioners to dentists working together, whether it was a one location, multiple dentists working together, or in the case of Heartland, 1,700 plus locations. But yeah, so Kim was the marketing and now the COO of the company because we realized that she was doing a heck of a lot more than that. Like she said, she does all the work while I'm out doing the sales.
I love it. So really quickly on this, so your company got pretty well known, and so we always get curious, behind the scenes. It's what we see is out, forward facing, right, to the industry, but behind the scenes, is it really that big, and what's happening, and how do you keep up, and what's going on with the business? We'll definitely jump into some of your personal story as well if you guys are open to it today. But what's happening with the company right now, and can you tell our listeners, for maybe those who don't know what it is that you guys offer, what is it that you offer to these groups?
So for people who aren't familiar with us, we have a website called Group Dentistry Now. We also have a weekly e-newsletter called DSO Weekly E-News. And then we have a podcast and we do webinars. And the reason that we exist is to educate not only DSOs about other DSOs, but we act as a connector or a bridge from vendors to DSOs, because DSOs have issues and they need them solved, and vendors have the solution to those problems. And it's very difficult for a vendor to get in with a DSO because DSOs are big organizations. It's not like going to your solo practitioner down the street and knocking on the door and saying like, hey, I have this post I'd like to sell you. It's not like that in the DSO world. It's completely different marketing message, completely different sales cycle. So we act as a bridge, so we can deliver the vendor's message to the DSOs, but we also highlight DSOs in emerging dental groups. We have an awards called a yearly award that we present called the Emerging Group to Watch in that particular year, 2025, whatever. So we try to educate small groups, mid-sized groups, and large groups about what everybody else is doing, because in this space we find that there's a lot of people really need to know what other groups are doing. There's so many different models. And when we named Group Dentistry Now back in, I guess it was like 2014, we were very worried about using the word DSO because it had negative connotations at the time. And of course it still does. I mean, the industry has evolved a ton. When we first started doing it, we were having a lot of issues with people hating us and hating the fact that they considered us shills for the industry and things like that. But we're really just there to educate people, to inform them of what's happening, and that there are really good parts to DSOs that people were not learning about before. It was all negative and everybody was against DSOs. And we feel like Group Dentistry Now has sort of helped the reputation of the DSO space a little bit, hopefully more than a little bit. We're trying to highlight the all of the wonderful things that DSOs can do. Increasing access to care in underserved communities, of course, is one of the things that they do. But the list goes on. Dentists who are coming out of dental school, they come out with this enormous debt, and then they're going to go buy a practice or open up a practice and then have more debt. Like, that seems to be a little bit unrealistic when you're coming out of dental school with $1 million in debt, including your undergraduate loans. So
Right.
DSOs also help with that. So there's all these pluses and positive things. And that's our job. That's what we like to do, is we like to highlight the pluses and the benefits, because there are so many, and so many people are taking advantage of it now. We see so many new groups forming all the time. We see the reputation within the dental student community. People really want to work for DSOs. The question is, with over 2,000 groups and DSOs, who do you work for? Well, Group Dentistry Now is a place that people come to learn about that. Bill?
Yeah, I love it. And really quick, and then Bill, will flip over to you as well. But in doing this, you guys are working together. Do you work closely together? Are you guys working from home? Are you able to get along while you're doing this?
Well, yeah, we've been married for 30 years. So
Yeah.
for us, it seems very normal and seamless to work together. We work in the house together. We have, we have a great advantage over any other company because we like to walk and hike and do other things outside. And a lot of times we're brainstorming. So we're brainstorming for the company outside of the company hours, which is a great thing for us. Bill, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I think we get along pretty well. It's, you run a business and some people say, oh, wow, you're married to your business partner. And like, well, I couldn't do that. Or what do you hear that? Sometimes it's just kind of funny. Yeah, I think there's an advantage for sure. We share a lot of, yeah, like you said, Ken, some of the best ideas come from hiking, right? You're like, oh, what do you think about this? Bad idea. Okay, move on to this one. But yeah, I do think that there is an advantage. I think one of the other advantages we have too is that unlike some of the other publishers, well, one of the things back to the founding of the company back in 2014, I guess officially launching it then, founded a little bit before that. There really wasn't any content out there, except to Kim's point, negative content around the DSOs and the group practices. So we wanted to be this educational, positive voice. So we were really the first to kind of do that. And we've been fortunate. I think we were the first to talk about groups. And now the market has moved towards this modality of multi-site or multiple doctors working in one location. So the whole industry is shifting. It's not still a large chunk, but it's a bigger chunk of the industry. So I think we've just, we've kind of had a head start on some of the other publishers out there. And we're not just a publisher. We actually know and live and breathe dentistry. So we respect solo practitioners. We respect the large DSOs. We love working with the doctor-owned, doctor-led private group practices, because I think a lot of dentists or people in the industry that aren't familiar with the DSO space paint DSOs with a broad brush. But a 3-location doctor-owned group practice is a heck of a lot different than somebody that has 1,000 practices. And I think there are a lot of options out there.
I know Mike is going to jump in here. He's got probably some really good questions for you guys, but really quickly, how big of a role has marketing played into getting your name out there and for this company itself, given your marketing background, Kim, and some of your, event skills and that type of thing? Like, has that been a big thing?
So we started our company with $3,000, which was an investment in a website, and we've never paid for anything after that. We don't pay for we don't pay for publicity.
No. For marketing, I mean, we do pay for other things, but
we pay for other things, but she's talking about getting our name out there. We've never paid or advertised.
Tell them your strategy then. That would be great.
We created this business. We made this business on LinkedIn, and it's 10 minutes a day on LinkedIn, consistently every day, built our business. I mean, there's no question about it. Of course, Bill being out there, pounding the pavement there, and his relationships with customers obviously was a huge asset as well. But you can't reach everyone, and not everybody goes to shows. As a matter of fact, what we hear all the time is that, because we do consult with shows all the time, that it's the same faces over and over and over at the shows, the same vendors and the same groups. So really, we have an advantage in that department. And what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you undersell yourself a little bit when it comes to LinkedIn, because you've got close to 35,000 LinkedIn connections, or now followers, because they can't, with the 33,000, I think, is the cutoff for connections on LinkedIn. So they won't let anybody else connect. So now it's people follow you. So that was all built organically. There was no paid, because there are things you can do that are paid on LinkedIn. And we had never done that. Paid. And we don't pay for a premium account. We don't do it. It's all just consistency, which I think is probably the biggest challenge for people. People can do it for a month. They can be consistent for 2 months, but year in and year out, 10, 11 years now, most people can't do that. And of course, we have the content to back it up, and Kim's sharing the articles that we do every day, the podcasts, the webinars, things that are going on in the industry. There is this community, and in particular, group practices and DSOs tend to live on LinkedIn. Like, I think dentists and maybe solos tend to be a little bit more on, seems like Facebook and maybe Instagram. LinkedIn seems to be the preferred platform for DSOs.
And to your other question earlier about how we get along in our marriage, one of the best things, I think, I don't know, Bill, correct me if you think of, but one of the best things is that, Bill is an idea person. He comes up with these sometimes crazy and outlandish ideas, but he comes up with the ideas, but I can execute them. And I think the problem with having some of these people who are both, if you have 2 or 3 people who are leaders and both visionaries, doesn't go anywhere. But I think what really has built our company is that we'll come up with ideas when walking or whatever, or he'll come up with something, he'll approach me with something, and I will, you know, I will immediately implement. So from idea to implementation for us, it's a very quick thing. Sometimes we come up with an idea and 2 hours later I'm implementing it. That being nimble and flexible has been good. Also, we can be honest with each other. Like I said, Bill, I come up with ideas and he's like, "That is awful, stupid." Then
And then you'll still do it. No.
No, probably not. I wouldn't. We have very different personalities and approaches to life. So we're constantly saying to each other, your approach is to this or to not enough this. But, essentially we, for me personally, I just remain true to who I am. As long as I'm happy with the way, I try to say, well, what would someone else want from a product, or what does somebody else want to see? What is the vibe out there in the space? And then we try to deliver on that.
And what I was going to say is that transcends not only for group practices, DSOs, but obviously individual practitioners. What you're doing privately in your company is like that in any office dynamic, right? If it's a team of 2 or 3 versus many, right? There have to be leaders, there has to be followers, implementers, and so on. But to find your space within that either organization as a DSO or that individual practice. So that definitely, works for all types of business. What I was going to say about the DSO space and group practice space versus the solo practitioner space. I've been in the industry for about 20 years as well for large dental implant manufacturing on the prosthetic side. And now with Julieanne and I starting our own company in the space for development, is there's room for everyone, right? I mean, there's room for everyone. And what transcends is good dentistry and doing it the right way, right? And that's for the biggest of the DSO to the smallest of the individual practitioner. And a lot of people used to say about a certain DSO that was out there first in full arch dentistry, right? Clear choice. And everyone was wringing their hands. Oh, they're going to put everyone out of business and this and that. Well, what happened as you both know, and I'm sure Julieanne, is that elevated education within the communities, and actually everyone's full arch business went up, not just the big behemoth DSO that came into the market. So again, it's just about providing great dentistry is going to trump everything. And doing the right thing. And then whether it's a solo practitioner or a group practice or a DSO, I think that's very positive. So, and also, Bill, I saw something that you posted, I think it was yesterday or the day before, where didn't you show that's how someone gave you that negative? So I'm watching you, Bill. I see what you guys are doing now in the industry, but can you share with listeners what that was referenced to and your response to it? Because I did view that and I took that in. So
yeah. And before we go there, I would just, to your point about solo practitioners, I mean, we have quite a few solo practitioners that subscribe to our newsletter that are maybe not necessarily there to start their own DSO. Some might be, or private group practice at a location or two. But a lot of there to kind of elevate their business, to learn from like the Clear Choices of the world and some of the others. So it's kind of fascinating, as we see people subscribe to the newsletter. We've got a couple of qualifying questions and really want to know, are you part of a DSO or are you a solo practitioner? And with quite a few solo practitioners, in fact, more and more as of late. So I think it's, there's this thirst for knowledge, knowing that, hey, a lot of these groups have kind of figured out the business side of it. Maybe we can glean some pearls from them. And, Michael, you asked the question about that little LinkedIn private message that I had received. It was back about a month ago, I think. And I'm in a couple of those dental Facebook groups, and I think I know which one it was. I won't say, but I was in one of them, and I must have liked, and it was this dentist, I must have liked a comment that she made. I can't remember what the topic was or what her comment was, but I obviously liked it because the private message I got back from her was something to the effect that DSOs are ruining dentistry and we have nothing in common. Please do not like any of my comments. And fortunately, I don't know, it was a Saturday night that it was posted. I saw it Sunday morning. I took my phone and I took a picture of the laptop screen, and I was going to go back into it later and respond. And when I went back, it was gone. And I thought I almost was this some kind of crazy dream? And then I looked at my phone and I had taken a picture. What I realized later was she had blocked me after she sent it. So it was like, I don't want a response. I just want to let you know that you shouldn't respond. You shouldn't like it, because I think I liked something again, that she commented on. So yeah, I posted that because it was kind of fascinating and got quite a bit of traction on LinkedIn over that. I think we had like 50,000 impressions and 100 or so comments on it. It was very interesting. But back to Kim's point, there still is, to a degree, a battle between solos and DSOs, and where I think some of it maybe was justified to a degree a while back. Just I don't know anymore. It's like, gosh, if you're still fighting that fight, good luck.
Well, they are still fighting that fight. I mean, there is still such incredible prejudice. Now, the needle has shifted for sure, but there is still this fear or disdain. There are bad solo practitioners and there are good solo practitioners. There are, not so great DSOs, and then there are some great DSOs. And to generalize and compartmentalize as all of these people are awful and don't even speak to me about it. But we've run into that all the time. Now, I've run into it personally. We were at a dental event. It was not a DSO event. And I ran into it personally. It was pretty brutal. And I told Bill about it. And so he just got a little bit of it. But yeah.
I'm just going to chime in because I was about to ask you, what advice would you give to people to this? It's almost like this form of discrimination when people carte blanche it, right? And so if you were able to give our listeners, no matter which side of the spectrum, and I guarantee, because we have people who are chief clinical officers of DSOs that are coming on the show, and we have solo practitioners coming on the show, and the listeners make up everybody from the dental profession. What advice would you give to people who are charged about it? If you could give them a piece of advice about how to look at it, another way of, there's infinite possibilities, right? So what's another way of maybe viewing this?
Well, I'll say something, and then I'm sure Bill has his own points of view, but it's happening. This is not going to stop. I know some people might think it's going to stop, that we've reached the maximum consolidation. In my opinion, and in many people's opinions, we have not. So it's happening. So figure out a way to accept it. And then, crush whatever you're doing, crush it. Keep going. There's always going to be room for solo practitioners, of course, 100%. Just like there are probably still medical doctors out there who are not affiliated with hospital systems and large healthcare systems. Mine are all affiliated with hospital systems. And as a matter of fact, our hospital system that we are involved with, they just were bought by a larger systems. That consolidation of the consolidators is happening in dental as well. It's happening. What do you think? I mean, you have to just learn how to accept it, try to figure out a good thing. I mean, DSOs have an advantage in some ways, and solo practitioners have advantages in other ways. One of the advantages that DSOs have is they can provide technology, really amazing technology to their practitioners, because a lot of these new dental students that are graduating, they're in a different generation. They want things to be high tech and extremely digital, and they require all of these things. They want all of these things, and a DSO can provide that. And then solo practitioners, of course, they have their advantages too. So figure out what you're great at and just do it really well, because there's always going to be room for whatever your model is. There's going to be room for it.
Yeah, I agree. I love the idea that, you focus on what you do well, right? You niche and wherever you're at in that. But Bill, I'd love to hear your feedback on that as well, or your ideas around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kim's pretty right on most of that. It's why we see a lot of solo practitioners, I think, coming to our website and subscribing. Not that they want to be, the next Heartland. Maybe some do, but I think a lot of them are there just to say, okay, what can I learn from what these groups are doing on the business side of things, or maybe on the education side, technology side of things, marketing, all the S in service or support, right? All of those non-clinical functions that DSOs are providing to clinicians. I'm sure there's some things that they can learn there. I don't know, I think though there will probably, at least for the foreseeable future, be solo practitioners. Although I do think that the trend that you're seeing, that we've seen for 7-8 years now, and ADA kind of tracks a lot of this information, is that you see that every year there are fewer and fewer solo practitioners, and the decrease varies between, I think, 5 and 7% each year, decrease in number of solo practitioners. So where are they going? So some are probably selling their practice to a large DSO. I think a lot of them are forming what we call PGP, private group practice, which just means they added a location or they partnered up with a dentist or two down the street, and they're leveraging the same things that the larger DSOs are leveraging. They're leveraging, it can lower their supply costs. They don't want to work on, a lot of clinicians don't want to work on an island by themselves. They want mentorship. They want support from other dentists. They want to bring specialty in the practices. So I think we are going to see like this decline in solo, but it doesn't mean that they're all going to be these massive DSOs. A lot of it is just going to be these private group practices, and they're going to operate relatively similar to the way a solo is, but a more sophisticated business.
Yep. A lot of like with medicine, I come back from medicine before I got in the dental space 18 years ago. And we saw a lot of consolidation back then, right? With the MDs and the MD groups and the PTOs and so on. But again, like you said, there were also those specialty groups, and they're becoming more and more DSOs more recently than the past. But you're going to have those cosmetic groups, those cosmetic solo practitioners or implant solo practitioners that may have an implant center and some other things. So I agree, as the medical space has done, the dental space is falling, but you're right, there is room for everyone. It's about doing right by your patients and finding your niche and your calling where it comes. A question I have is, our podcast is called Influential Dental, right? And you are both very influential in the DSO space as what you do. I would like to know, some of the organizations and DSOs that you've worked with that have been influential, that you've seen either working with them directly or seeing them from afar. Like what makes a DSO influential or a group practice influential? And I guess I'll leave it at that for now.
Good. It's a good question. So you want me to start, Kim?
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it's there. I guess there are the individuals that you look up to in the industry, right? Or you have respect for, and then there are the organizations. And I would say there's a lot of DSOs that I hate to leave anybody out. But as far as organizations go, I think in our early days as learning, the DSO group practice business, Mortensen Dental was one that I kind of looked at as a really interesting model. And the people that ran it, Dr. Wayne Mortensen, who's since retired, Bill Becknell's the CEO there, but they're ESOP, so employee owned. So they're not private equity backed. Not to say there's anything wrong with that. But I attended some of they would have meetings. It was called Scaling Up. Yeah. And what they would do is they'd invite people to Louisville, Kentucky, which is where they were based out of. And they would invite other DSOs, so competitors in a lot of cases, to learn from them. And they would share. They would share, and you could ask any question, how they paid their how they paid their hygienists, how they measured, things, what were the KPIs that mattered the most. And I sat in on all those meetings, and these were competitors asking them those questions. So that was pretty refreshing. So I would say somebody like Mortensen and the team there, I think people like organizations like MB2, which is the first dental partnership model. And now there's plenty of others, Guardian Dentistry. There's quite a few. And I really enjoy working with a lot of the private group practices. We've got the folks at Aereo Dental. And again, I don't want to leave anybody out because there's so many groups out there. A lot of the, I would call them mom and pop, the private group practices, we and Kim works with, and just, good people and really great business people and great clinicians. And a lot of times we think that the two can't meet, right? You're either a great clinician or a great business person, and you can't be both. And really, with a lot of these private group practices, you have a lot of clinicians, DMD, DDSs that also have their MBAs or are just great natural business people.
I love what you're sharing. I'm curious, and I've also worked with people from MB2 and some of these others, and it's not to neglect to say that there are many really good people out there, right? Because organizations at the end of the day are made up of people, right? And so I'm just kind of curious. So when you're working with all these different groups, you probably see some things that have really led to their success, or some things that have maybe even led to their demise. And without naming names, what are some of the things on either end of the spectrum that you have seen that might be, because I love this idea of sharing what works and people not feeling like it has to be competitive, because we're all going to have our own niche. But what have you seen that has caused success or caused the demise of some of these groups coming together, or had them, dip and then have to come back or recover from it? If there's anything you can think of off the top of your head.
That's a giant question. Wow. Huge. I can take like a sliver of it and say, well, one of the most rewarding parts of my job is highlighting these emerging dental groups. Like I said earlier, I alluded to that we have an award that we give out every year to, 5, 6, 7, whatever it is. Every year it changes, emerging groups to watch for that particular year. I think in maybe still in the solo practitioner world, when you say DSO, they think, a Heartland or these huge groups, but really what I really, and I love to do, believe me, I consult with the big DSOs. I try to help them, but it's the smaller ones. You can see them evolve and grow. It's just really special, to see how they are really families. They support each other, and the camaraderie amongst the emerging groups is fantastic because, it's not necessarily competitive all the time because you might be in the Midwest, whereas this, emerging dental group is only in, say, the Southeast. So you don't have a competing market, so to speak. Now, of course, there is competition amongst the DSOs for recruitment. Recruiting is very difficult right now. And another heartwarming part of the industry that I love is the philanthropy. That's something that sets some groups apart. And it's nice to see them giving back to the community. So in terms of success, how to make a successful group, you have to have like all of the components. Giving back is huge. Giving back to the community is huge because you're appealing to dentists nowadays, these young, especially the younger dentists, the dentists who are just coming out of dental school. They love the philanthropy that a DSO or a group has. They also don't want to work, 5 days a week. They want a truncated schedule. They don't want to have to work after hours doing all of the administrative functions that a solo practitioner would have to do. All of these things, the mentorship, and again, if you have a solid mentorship program, that also helps create a successful DSO because they're looking for training. They're not coming out of dental school with the training that they need. They might have the book knowledge, but do they have the hands-on training? Most likely no. So a great mentorship program. We've seen DSOs struggle. Bill can talk about this too, when they hit like the 6 to 10 location mark because, it's easy to scale 1, 2, 3, 4. But what happens when you get up into like the 6, 8, 10 practices? We see a lot of stumbling. You have to have your systems in place. You have to have centralization. Bill, what do you?
Quick question on that, just because you mentioned it, and before we go further. So we have a lot of listeners who are actually doctors coming out of school or out of residency, and they are going through this process of vetting their options right now. And I've heard all kinds of feedback and murmurs in terms of what they're up against and, just some of the pressure that they're feeling coming out of school. Any recommendations to those people coming out of school right now in terms of what to look for and how to vet their opportunities?
I'll toss it to Bill, but I've written articles specifically on this issue before. If you are a new dentist or a dentist who's just going to graduate, please remember, interview DSOs and emerging groups. There are thousands of them out there. Take your time. Make sure you have a list of things that are important to you. If giving back to the community is important to you, have whatever is on that list. If they'll pay back the loans for you or a portion of the loans for you, whatever is most important, have your list ready and go in. They want you. They need you. You are in a seat of power. They need your help. If you really need mentorship, if you want to have some sort of mentorship program, make sure you're going in with a group that has that. You can get what you want. Just make sure you are very clear. Sit down and say, what do I absolutely need? There are groups out there. If it was me, I would feel more comfortable in this group. Maybe I would feel more comfortable in a group that has 10 locations, has ambitions to grow to 50 locations. Or maybe, for me, I want to go in with a really big group. I want to go in with somebody that has certain technology and certain mentorship programs in place, formal mentorships programs in place.
I love this. I want to know if you would be willing to contribute an article to our magazine Influence. So for the industry, that would be amazing. I'll come back to you after when we're not recording. But on that topic, I think that would be so valuable, even if it's a short article with some tips or something. That would be phenomenal. I'll email you on that one.
I'm sure Bill has more to say.
Yeah.
I'll take the flip side of it where you were talking about why some groups maybe struggle. And a lot, if we go way back to 2020 or 2021, when interest rates were still low, a lot of these groups were acquiring their growth. And so they had a model based on acquisition. So they were really good at acquiring practices maybe I shouldn't say they were really good because they overpaid in some cases, or they may have in a lot of cases duct tape practices. In other words, bought a bunch of practices in a geography because they were in a geography and they thought that they could create a group, sell it to the next investor, and make money. So they were just going to, through scale, flip it to the next private equity firm. And what happened was interest rates rose. The practices that they bought maybe weren't the practices that they should have acquired. There wasn't a cultural fit. They didn't integrate them into their group. They didn't have the systems in place, that S in support or service. They didn't have the support that these practices needed. So I think that's what we're seeing now is we've got at least a dozen groups out there that are not in the best of shape. They are not growing at all. They're trying to fix what they've acquired. It's kind of an interesting time. And that's why I really see there's still growth with DSOs. It's slowed down. There's some that are not acquiring practices. They're trying to focus on same store sales growth, organic growth at the practice level. And so we hear a lot of talk around bringing specialty into the practices, right? And if they're they're doing general dentistry and they're shipping out endo and other things and oral surgery, they of course want to try and bring that in, right? As we know, it's really easy to say that. It's really difficult to execute on that. So I think there's some groups out there that probably just were really good at acquiring practices and they had no cultural fit. And it's going to take a while for those groups to unwind what they did over the past couple of years. And some of them probably won't survive as is. And what does that mean? They'll most likely be acquired. And are you acquiring all the practices that they own? In some cases, these buyers they don't want certain practices.
Are they going to cut some off? Is that what they're doing? They're sort of negotiating the higher performing practices.
These are things you don't hear. Like nobody talks about this. We'll talk about the de novos and acquisitions all day. We bought this practice, we built this new one, but you're never going to hear the other side of things, and that's quietly going on. I mean, it's not the entire industry, but there are portions of it. I think we've had a couple of years now for DSOs to kind of figure out this same store sales. Like, what are we going to focus on? We can lower costs, right? We can be more efficient, but there's only so much you can do. I mean, supplies are only 7 or 8% of your total spend. So you could really go crazy and lower that, but it's not going to affect your bottom line that much. So it's how do you increase top line? Patient acquisition, treatment acceptance, bringing specialty in, and it's pretty difficult.
Bill, I agree with all of that. I see it as well. I want to circle back with what you said, and Kim, you mentioned culture, and then Kim, you talked about newer graduates finding a fit for them. But what Julieanne and I do in our company, in Influential Dental, is that piece regarding culture. I think everyone, whether they're single practitioner or DSO space, need to be sound in their clinical background or get better at it. But again, they may not be sound in how to fit in, how to work best with others, about mindset, how to influence, how to build your team up, how to be a true leader, right? How to lead. I see a lot of that in all organizations, not just group practices, but in individual practices as well. Kind of the soft skills, right? Because as you talked about, Bill, I mean, you can time or whatever a treatment, the cost, that. But again, it's, are people coming into work? Are people burned out? Are they taking too much time off? Are they getting out of the industry because they don't know how to get along? So I wanted to ask you, Bill and Kim, about that. And then also Julieanne, because I know obviously, working with you, you're an expert in that space, right? Mindset, burnout prevention, and how that relates to the group practice and DSO space. So I know that's a long loaded question, but I would love to hear it as our time permits from you, Bill and Kim, on that aspect of group practices and DSOs, and then Julieanne, your thought on it as obviously an expert in this field.
Good, Julieanne, you want to start?
Okay, yeah, so I'll just chime in very quickly. So I think what's interesting is when we talk about competition, right? And everybody being so scared of competition, I've always had this mindset that there is no competition because I feel like we all have our own gifts and we're, I know I'm not for everybody, but I am for somebody, right? Is sort of the way I look at things. And so when I see people coming in to try to train these soft skills, I'm not afraid of that at all because there's so much that is needed. And one of the challenges that you come up against with these larger groups is how do you implement, right? And Kim, this will be a great thing for you to chime in on, because implementation is usually the most difficult. You have sometimes red tape. You have so many different, places you got to get this information out to. How do you work with schedules, et cetera, et cetera. So what I have niched in is really a train the trainer program for these groups, right? And so I'm only going in and working with our highest level mentors so that I can make it sustainable. I can walk away and they can go and then implement within the practice on those same types of skills, right? So I'm teaching them a variable of it, if you will. And that I can implement, but I couldn't go out and train every practice. There's just no way, right? And so I'm always like, welcome. If there's more people who can help, then it's beneficial because it actually makes everyone's lives better. And in fact, and everybody can enjoy this more. But love to hear your input, and great question, Mike. Thanks for asking for my input. I don't think you've ever done that before as my partner.
Well, this is the first time for anything. We're growing as well, Julieanne, so it's all good.
But thank you. It's fun to talk. No, I'm kidding. Kim, I think you're more of an expert. I'd love to hear your input on that.
Toss that to Bill. What do you think, Bill?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you kind of go back to the culture side of things, and it's, I don't joke about it, but I think when you're looking at the DSOs that exist out there, the ones that scream the loudest about their culture tend to have the worst culture. And so when it's just amazing. And there was one in particular 3 or 4 years ago that the founders are gone. They've gone through several layers of executives. I think training and education, whether it's clinical, whether it's soft skills, I think there's a huge gap with most of these groups. And some of the larger groups have figured it out to a large degree. At least it seems that way from the outside perspective. But I would say most groups out there aren't really good at much education. I mean, when I mean the soft skill side of it, the clinical education, a lot of groups, and again, we go back to this S in support, the support or the service, that's kind of the thing you're supposed to do as a DSO, provide all those non-clinical services or support. And it's amazing how many don't have any formalized training, implementation, integration. They don't do it, or they don't do it really well. I hear it time and time again. And I think it's one of these things that these groups strive for and they need. Sometimes they're not focused on it. They probably have 10 priorities, and it's not one of the top 10, even though it probably should be, because it creates value. It helps with retention. You're building that culture that you talk about that really might not exist or may not be the kind of culture that you want. So I do think there's this huge education gap in the space. We've done some work on the clinical side of things and some online soft skill, training. It's just, it's a shame. It's not a priority. I mean, you may say it is, but the reality is much different.
Right.
I'm going to share.
And it comes down to one reason. What would you say the reason is?
What, the one reason besides money? Or is it
No,
money?
that's the only reason.
Well, and I have another reason as well. I do agree with money, but also I think is control. And why I say that is because, again, you grow, you build, you control the environment as a group practice DSO. You try to make everything the same, right? And I think their expertise isn't in the education and training realm. It is in the numbers and that. But I think it's just opening themselves up to trust or find the right partners to do that. And that's why, we're looking to be successful in that space. And Julieanne has been very successful in that space, is to find those true trusted partners that it's not a conflict. It's that we're here to help, and it's okay to give up a little control for us to help you get there. But yeah, money, we hear all the time, right? I mean, it's a bottom line business for a lot of these groups. But in fact, I will flip that on its head. If you don't invest in your people or train them in your skills, you're going to have higher turnover, higher burnout. People are going to leave your organization.
Yeah.
So it's not a cost. It's a investment in the growth and the success of your business.
Exactly.
I would agree entirely. And I think you're right, Kim. What I hear most is actually the cost, right? But when they see that there might be another way. So I think a lot of times, people who are running these businesses, they see this option at the cost of this option, or vice versa. I would say there's another option, right? Like there's a way to be creative. If somebody is willing to be open-minded to hear it, there's actually another way that makes it sustainable. There's unquestionably going to be a result that is positive, that's going to impact the bottom line. And if they see that, it's significant compared to the cost. The cost is nothing, It's a tiny piece, right? I almost feel like it's actually easier to go in and sell soft skills if you tie it to clinical skills and do them both at the same time, because they get it with clinical, but they don't get it with the soft skills. And so it's fascinating. It's just a mindset, you know.
And efficiency is a key to the success of a DSO, right? So, or any business. I mean, even a small business like we have, it's all about efficiency. You have a certain amount of time and you want to accomplish all of these things. Well, if you have somebody who you've got this constant turnover and then you're retraining and retraining and retraining, well, that's just taking so much time. Why don't you just invest in one person? Or like we have an online educational system where you don't actually need anybody to teach anybody. It's right there in the computer. It just seems to make perfect sense. But when you're worrying about money too, obviously money is important for all businesses. We wouldn't have a business if we weren't making a certain amount of money. So you can't really hold it against the DSOs for sort of being in the same.
Yeah,
I think it's short-sighted. I think, but here's an idea. You mentioned Julieanne and Michael, that you've got a lot of young clinicians that are listening, watching the podcast, and they can be the force to make this educational change. That should be one of the questions they ask.
Right.
What kind of clinical and soft skill training do you provide? That should be on the checklist. I would say that everybody would want that. And what does it look like? Another thing I would say too, which is something I wanted to mention earlier for some of these younger docs, maybe some docs that are still potential docs that are in dental school, dental students. There are ownership opportunities or partnership opportunities with DSOs. So don't think that you're just going to work for a DSO. If you've got this idea that, hey, I want to be an owner of a practice, but I've got $500,000 in debt, so that's not happening anytime soon. You can get those. Hopefully you find the right DSO that has this training, the education, the mentorship, helps you pay down your student debt. And there might be an opportunity, what they call a pathway to partnership, where you can come in as an associate and learn and then buy into a practice if that's what you want. And I think not everybody wants that, but it's something that I think sometimes you think DSO, you don't think that's even an opportunity.
And there's a famous saying in our space: if you've seen one DSO, you've seen one DSO. Interpret that as you may, but basically you cannot judge all DSOs on one DSO or even 10 DSOs that you know about, because every single one, we do this day in and day out, and every single one is truly different. So please keep that in mind when you're out there. You cannot just compartmentalize everything and say they're all like this, because there are thousands of them out there, and
I have to share something laughable about that. So it's interesting because some of the DSOs who have hired me to come in and do the Train the Trainer program literally have over 90% retention. And what is different about them? And it's fascinating because they're actually the ones that don't probably need me, and so you think about it, but they're investing in me, you know what I mean? Or in themselves, I should say, with another program. There's something to be said about that, right? So it's interesting that, the people who, it's almost like, our company, Influential Dental, is personal and professional development, right? For dental professionals. And you look at the people who come and want it are the people who are doing the best. They really are. And they don't really, you really aren't teaching them anything that they don't know. In fact, what you're doing is you're just going back to help them practice the basics. It's like sports or anything else. What makes anybody great at, music or anything? And it's going back to what are these foundational, simple principles that's clinical or in the world of soft skills, all of it, right? So
right.
I love that we're having you on the show today. I think this is such an incredible conversation. We are coming to the end of our time. And so I want to give you an opportunity to chime in with anything else that might be beneficial, and also give Michael a chance to ask any last questions. And then we'll wrap it up. And we may have to come back to you guys and ask you to be on another show at some point.
Well, that's
and get
great.
really pointed.
Well, I would encourage all of your listeners, whether they're students or solar practitioners or, anybody in dental, to subscribe to our e-newsletter. It's free and it comes out every Thursday. It's the DSO Weekly E-Newsletter. You can just go to our website, groupdentistrynow.com. And on the right-hand corner, you can click subscribe. You can also subscribe to our podcast, which is called the Group Dentistry Now Show, the voice of the DSO industry. And, That's available on all of your favorite listening platforms, Spotify, whatever, Apple, wherever, YouTube as well. Ours are all video as well as so that you can, sometimes we have videos up there. So it's a great way to stay educated and informed. And the podcast offers different information that's on our website. So it's great to subscribe to both to get the full knowledge base that you need to succeed in the space, or if you're just even curious.
We noticed you had Brian Kaleo, who was just on your show, and actually after you guys were recording him, he's going to be on our show. So I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. Mike noticed that and mentioned it. Mike, did you have other questions? Kim, thank you so much. And also, where can people find you on social media?
Oh, right. So I'm Kim Larson. I'm on LinkedIn. Please follow me. I can't necessarily connect, but if you want to follow me, that's great. And then Bill is Bill Neumann. And then I don't know, Bill, do you have anything else to say about that? That's really where we live.
You can still connect with me. I still have quite a few connections open. You're the one that's maxed out. So yeah. You can still,
we live on LinkedIn. We post updates, or I post an update every single day, just trying to keep everybody informed of what's going on. Occasionally post polls. And then Bill, of course, posted this thing the other day that Michael was talking about, this interesting
definitely
response.
Got a lot of responses. So it's pretty interesting. We'll I'd be happy to. We're going to actually, I think, write in a follow-up article about it, and so we'll have that on our website to kind of share some of the discussion around it. It was pretty fascinating. Again, the hatred in the DSO space still.
It's almost like beware if you guys want to say anything to these guys. No, I'm kidding. It's going to be.
I didn't share the person's name, so I did not share who it was.
No, I think it's phenomenal that you shared this, though, so that it opens up a dialogue rather than being angry. Why wouldn't we want to be open to conversation and just holding space for human beings to have different ways of looking at things, right? So I think it's phenomenal that you shared this. I think it was really bold of you and brave, and it helps a lot of people. It's why it's getting that reaction, right? So for what it's worth.
I think so. I would have liked to just know why she was angry. It didn't necessarily matter to me. I mean, I wasn't upset about it. I was just surprised at the reaction. And so it would have been nice to find out if maybe she worked for a DSO at some point and had a bad experience, or maybe there was a DSO that came into town and caused problems with, maybe maybe some patients went over the DS. Who knows? So I don't know. Maybe she had a bad experience as a patient at a DSO. You never know. So it would have been nice to know, but that's okay.
And Bill, I want to thank you and Kim as well for being on. Obviously, throughout the years, I've known of your publication. Actually, I subscribe as well, and obviously follow you guys and see you on social media. So I would advise people everywhere to obviously follow us at Influential Dental, follow American Dental Institute, who's our sponsor. Follow people in the industry who provide good quality information and content, because again, that's what it is. There's plenty of room to go around for all of us to not only influence dentistry, but also to be the voice of reason and not that negative space. Because again, there's a lot of that out there, whether it's between groups, between DSOs, between individuals and things. I mean, there's enough good quality dentistry to be provided to the population out there. Tens of millions, we know the numbers. So again, I just want to say that, but I do thank all of our listeners out there. I thank you and Ken for being on. Julieanne, of course, is a great co-host. And again, it's about influencing dental and dental companies and individuals to be the best they can be. So I'll leave everyone at that.
Thank you guys so much. Any last words for our listeners before we wrap up?
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, really great conversation. I really appreciate you both for being here. Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.